Hello and welcome to the almost pulled off the wrong slogan there. Hello and welcome to the Cinque F1 Esports Championship, round 6 here at Imola. Of course, we are looking at 17 and a half minutes of qualifying, a odd qualifying format, I'm sure, as well as a half race length means it's a very short evening for us all, hopefully, if there are no safety cars, which of course we have seen in the past over at Monaco. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We do this 2 weeks on, a week off, 2 weeks on, a week off, 2 weeks on, so we've just come back from a week's break after our last race over at Hungary, in which chaos reigned as the rain poured down during both qualifying and the race. And then of course there was the change of weather halfway through the race, which ultimately meant that things spiced up towards the end of the race. Keegan took last race win, with George and Ryan taking P2 and P3, our other podium finishers, after a very interesting couple final laps as the track dried up and the race pace changed. Now, we are doing quali on a dry track, so it'll be interesting to see how these guys perform. As we follow Aka now. So Aka currently is P4 in the championship, so he is still quite close to the podium drivers, but he's even closer to Gomez, who will be Papa, who is not here today. So he'll be extending his lead over Papa, who's a position just behind. However, I'm sure that Keegan, who's also currently here in the lobby, will be making an effort to overtake both of these drivers in the Drivers' Championship standings. Currently Pagadala leading the championship, P1. Then it's Hollow Chicken 60, who is in the game right now, P2, and then George, P3. So it will be an interesting course of events, I think. It might shake up the championship leaderboard slightly. Right, now let's get all this stuff set up. There we go, that is it. Cool. So, currently following Aka, coming round the final couple bends to set the first lap of this evening over in the UK, and I'm sure in India as well, EST. There we go, with a 1:15.7. So that is our first lap time of the evening. Let's go on board for a quick little onboard lap. Little track tour. That was through turns 2, 3, now 4. That was through Tamburello, coming up onto turns 5 and 6 now for Villeneuve. Another fast, chicaney kind of couple corners. Then into turn 7. Not quite a hairpin, but there is camber, and you need to slow down a lot more than you do for the other corners. Up the hill through turn 8, then into Piratella, turns 9 and then 10. Then down the hill into the interesting section of turns 11, 12 and 13, Aqua Minerale. Back up the hill, small straight before we hit the chicane of turns 14 and 15, Grissini, where the exit is very slippery if you get your throttle down wrong. However, Aka has managed to keep it very steady through there. Then into turn 16 and 17, get the braking zone nice and straight for turn 18, through Ravazza, turn 19, and then on to the finish straight. Turn 20 and 21 would be the two right-handers onto the pit straight, but Aka decides to come in. Currently, Hollow Chicken is our pole sitter. We call him the provisional pole sitter because the times change constantly. So for the time being, he is currently on pole, 1:14.5. But Keegan, who we are on board with right now, is not far off, a 1:14.6, only a tenth separating these two. Hollow Chicken has just come in for a fresh set of tyres after his qualifying attempt. Keegan coming around the final corner now, also coming into the pit. So that is our first draft, if you will, of the lap times. Hollow Chicken, then Keegan, then Acker. Oh, and George suddenly crosses the line to take a 1:14.7, which puts him P3 on the leaderboard. So here is George now. And then further down the grid, we of course have the rest of the drivers. Ryan, who was a rookie sensation at Hungary last race, currently P6 with a 1:16.3. Now in the wet, Ryan was an absolute golden bullet, and he absolutely sped through the standings at various times after some pit miscommunication between the pit wall and the driver, let's say that. And of course we do have some other drivers joining us. We have HLR Nicholas and HLR Silver, as well as our other drivers, Kunga and Sully. Kunga now coming into the pit, Sully still on a lap. Now, you might be wondering, if this is your first time, you're wondering, what are these names? Well, unfortunately, these are not the actual names of the drivers. These are the usernames. And so we've come up with kind of a small name for each of them, so we don't have to say the whole thing. You know, rather than saying Ryan3938 is going for an overtake, we just say Ryan. So from the top, I'll just take you through them real quick. We've got Hollow Chicken, Keegan, George, Nicholas, Ryan, Acker, Silver, Kunga and Sully. Our 9 drivers driving today, 2 of which are new. 2 of which are joining us for the first time this season, at least on the broadcast. We did not broadcast round 3 at Las Vegas, so I'm not sure whether they've actually raced before. But if they have, then it's good to see them back. I'm sure the other drivers are excited to have some more drivers to race against. Now, of course, another name that isn't here, a big one, is Pagadala, of course, our current championship leader. He's not here. Maybe he's taking a break just to focus more on his technique, a little more on his consistency. He has been posting pole lap times. However, pole position lap times. There we go. And unfortunately, he just doesn't manage to keep it right at the end when it matters. The last 2 races, he's just on the final lap, being pipped by someone else. First by Hollow Chicken, then by Keegan last week. Speaking of Hollow Chicken and Keegan, they are on an out lap at the moment. There's Hollow Chicken coming through Ravazza, turns 18 and 19 to start his first lap. And Keegan, he's just coming through Grassini, turns 14 and 15. But let's follow Chicken now on his quali lap. This is going to be a big improvement from his initial time. We found that especially in this series, they just go for a lap, come in, go for a lap, come in. That way they are on optimal tyres all through the session. Only 9 minutes remaining in the session, and you can see the slip angle that Hollow Chicken had on that car, absolutely flying through that right-hander, but he has seemed to slow down slightly. I'm not sure whether it's just me being ignorant of the speed so far, but that first sector did seem a bit slow. He is coming through the second sector now. Through Aqua Minerale next. Bring the car over, way to the left, try and get that car straightened up for the braking zone. And it does seem as though he's trying to conserve those tyres, preserve the grip, so he can go for a proper run next. And yes, I think that is an invalidated lap time for the provisional pole sitter, who has set a 1:14.5. So already improvements there. Now Keegan also going wide through turn 15. So I think these drivers are just trying to hold back and set up for another lap. Keegan might duck into the pits for a fresh set. Nope, he stays out. So let's jump back. Oh, there we go. So Keegan actually did not invalidate a lap time, and he jumps up 4/10 from where he was previously. So Keegan now with a 1:14.2, followed by Hollow Chicken a 1:14.5 and George a 1:14.7. But Nicholas, seems to be another new name to the podium roster potentially. Nicholas with a 1:14.8, so not much difference between himself and George. Could this be new potential for a podium battle? Now, of course, Hollow Chicken coming through turns 14 and 15. He's absolutely sending it into that chicane. He needs to respond to the time set by Keegan. He's currently 0.3 slower on his fastest lap. Now coming through Ravazza and locking up heavily so far. And straight into the pits he goes. So fresh set of tyres for Hollow Chicken. He's maybe got 3 or 4 more attempts at a lap time before the end of quali. We've only got 7 minutes left. We have already gone 10 minutes. Can you believe it? I don't feel like I've been babbling about anything useful so far. Keegan now also into the pits. George now comes across the line. Does he manage to improve his time? Yes, he does. In fact, so much he's overtaken Hollow Chicken. Now it's only a 10th, less than a 10th between Keegan and George now for pole. So George now making his presence known once again. He has fallen back slightly, it seems, in the last couple races. He's been up there in the podium positions, but he hasn't really been challenging for the race wins. But now he's back and he shows he wants to start way up there rather than a little further down the grid and kind of a little less on the radar. So then Chicken needs to improve by about 0.8. And yeah, see how it goes. Now, of course, further down we do have Ryan. Again, one of our rookie sensations. Last race, he turned up, he raced. He was a race leader at some point and had the pace to finish on both the podiums and potentially the race win. But unfortunately, due to just circumstances at the race end, he just couldn't hold it together for a podium position. Oh, sorry, he did. He did, sorry. But he took P3 rather than the P2 or the P1 he could have. And after all that, in the post-race interviews, he rocked up and said, "Hey, this is my first race on F1 24. So Ryan potentially also one of our championship contenders. However, the fact that he's joined this late means that in terms of the championship points, he might not be in such a good place, I think. As he ducks into the pits to set a couple new laps and a fresh set of tyres. Aka now going around the track. He's improved by 0.4. He's currently P5. If he can get this to work, then he could potentially take P4 away from Nicholas. So this is Aka now coming through the first sector. And that was turn 7. He just came through now into the fast double left-handers. Then into Aqua Minerale. Uphill through sector 3. And he's pretty much bang on his time. He needs to improve by half a second if he wants to take the position away from Nicholas. Nicholas himself is on an outlap, so he's going to be chasing Hollow Chicken. He only has 0.3 to make up to P3. Aka now coming through Ravazza. Turn 19. A little flick of the tail. How does he fare? Aka improves by almost 0.2, but of course that's not enough. 0.3 to Nicholas, then another 0.3 to the next driver. Speaking of Nicholas, here he is, currently going through the left-hander of turn 8, 9 and 10, then into Aqua Minerale. Again, straight up the hill into sector 3. How has he done so far? He's improved by 0.4. Could this be Nicholas's opportunity to take P3 away from Hollow Chicken? Hollow, who has had such a good reputation for fast racing. He's been a race leader for so many races already. Will he be beaten by Nicholas? Coming out the final corner, Nicholas now crosses the line. Oh my goodness! Nicholas taking provisional pole. So that is Nicholas up into P1, and he has beaten Keegan by, let me do the quick maths here, 0.006 seconds. 0.006 of a second between these two drivers. Keegan then, in response, about to set another lap time. 2:50, that's 17 hundredths between these two. 17 hundredths between Keegan and Nicholas for provisional pole. Now, Aka, Ryan and Silva are also out there. George and Chicken are on an out lap as well. 2 minutes remaining in the session. Keegan and Nicholas might drop back into the pit lane just to get a set of fresh new tyres so they can go for a final lap. But for George and Chicken, this might be their final laps, and Silva has retired from the session. We've got no idea why at the moment, but we will come back to that. Chicken now starts his lap time down in P4 through turn 1 into turn 2. He's not leaving any room for error on those curbs. He's absolutely pushing this car to its limit. You can see up on the curb to the left. Woo! Right up on the verge between the curb and the grass as he came through turn 17 there. Sorry, no. Wow, my eyes. Wow, sorry. That was through Villeneuve, turn 6, exited turn 6. There we go. Now through turn 9 and 10 into Aqua Minerale. Again up the hill, leaving no room for error all the way through the lap. He's up 3/10, so that would put him between George and Nicholas on the leaderboard. Is it going to be enough to take P2? I'm not sure. A little lock up on the entry of turn 18 now across the line. Where does Hollow Chicken come out? Hollow Chicken, in fact, takes pole position. Wow, so there's a 5-way battle for pole position here. As the graphics go a little haywire. Again, small margins. There is, in fact, only about 2/10. No, only about 1/10 separating George and Chicken, our top 4 drivers. Now Nicholas takes pole again, 1:14.0. So Keegan then needs to set another lap time. He's coming through Aqua Minerale now himself. George across the line. George takes pole position, 13.8. Keegan, currently P4, coming through turns 14 and 15. Has he had an incident? I think so. He does seem to be moving a little slower than usual, and I think that is his qualifying over. When he crosses this line, that will be the end of his qualifying. So the final qualifying laps now for every driver. Yeah, there he is, a distraught Keegan. Unfortunately, he just pushed a little too hard on that final lap and somewhere lost it to Hollow Chicken. Now coming through turn 18 and then 19, Ravazza. He'll be the first of our top 3 to set a lap. Will he take pole position? Will he improve, or will he stay where he is? If he improves, well, there's potential for a pole here. And across the line, that is unfortunately Hollow Chicken's qualifying session ended. Now we've got Nicholas and George. Nicholas will be the first across. No, he jumps into the pits as well. That's his quali session over. Seems as though all these top 3 drivers have not managed to set in a good time, have not managed to turn in a good time. Even George now comes into the pits, and I believe that is going to be the end of quali for all our drivers. So that was a very interesting qualifying session. Times were just jumping all over the place, and we've got 4 drivers all contending for the pole position. So it will be very interesting to see how these drivers fare during the race, whether the competitiveness will be exactly the same, or whether it'll up, or whether it will go down. We've got no idea. And if you want to find out, then just stay on for another 32 laps of racing. That's what's coming up, half race length. whirlwind of pole laps. First it was Keegan, then it was Hollow Chicken, then it was Nicholas, then it was George. Currently our top three being George, then Nicholas, then Hollow Chicken. A couple familiar names and a rookie to the broadcasting ready to put his stamp on this championship. Nicholas starting from P2 on the front line of the grid. So join us now for half race length. And here we go, 32 laps of racing here at Imola after a whirlwind of a qualifying session. 4 drivers all battling it out for pole position, all battling now for the race win and the coveted top 3 podium positions. The lights come on. And the green flag waves at Imola. Tyre smoke ascends into the air. George has had a good start. Looking down at Nicholas. He's trying to fend off Keegan. And there's Keegan going down the inside potentially for a move. Cars moving all over the place. Keegan seems to have dropped a couple positions. Hollow Chicken has gone up. They're 3 wide almost coming into turn 2, 3 and then 4. Now the cars have already started going into a single file lines. There's Aka maybe trying to make a move on Keegan. He was side by side. So Aka trying to make early progress on that P4 car ahead. But in doing so, he has lost the rear slightly, and he is defending now from Silver, who has managed to take that position. So Keegan has managed to stay safe in that whole interaction. At the moment, it is George leading the race. Had a reasonably good start, and now all he has to do is just hold on to the end. He's already got half a second between himself and Nicholas, who is already proving himself to be a really fast driver. You've got Chicken also having a look there in the background. Kunga and Sully just swapped a position down in P8. So the lap 1 chaos has just about abated. We've got Nicholas in P2. He's maybe got a little bit of slipstream, but looking back, he has to remember he's got Chicken behind him as well. But looks like he's not letting that bother him. He's already going straight into it. 0.2 seconds between himself and the race leader, George. But now Hollow Chicken is right up behind him. A little bit of a tap to the rear just to remind him, hey, I'm still here. Don't forget about me. So Nicholas then, currently driving P2. Looks like he's got the pace to get past George for the race lead. And Hollow Chicken is also not far behind. So there are no massive crashes or horrendous losses. At the moment, very tight racing between the top 3 drivers. Looks like Nicholas now only 0.2 seconds, 0.3 seconds behind George for the race lead. Keegan, you can see in the background, also trying to catch up to this trio. And then it's going to be Aka, who's maybe slightly behind. There's Hollow Chicken going down the inside, and he's crashed out. Fortunately, Nicholas hasn't lost control of the car. It seemed as though Hollow Chicken just bounced off the bodywork of that car in P2. So Hollow Chicken then preserves P4. He was in P3, just dropped 1 position, but that means we are now down to 2 drivers up at the front fighting for position. We have though seen Keegan catch up and of course have great race pace. I'm thinking of Jeddah, where he went on a massive recovery run. Looked like he was going to finish P5, ended up finishing P2 after 2 drivers crashed out or retired from the race session. Then of course there was Hungary, where he started on pole, lap 1 crash with Pagadala, and then a huge recovery run throughout the rest of the evening to retake the race lead and ultimately the race win. Now they are coming through turns 11, 12 and 13. Nicholas is very close up behind that car ahead. Now we did see DRS enabled from race control. Keegan is not too far behind, and as they come through this left-hander now into the right-hander of turn 17, then through Ravazza, I think the two drivers behind, Nicholas and Keegan, will have DRS through the straight. Now let's go from Keegan's viewpoint. You can hear the little beep saying, yes, you have DRS. Here's a move from Nicholas. He's got the DRS. He's going to have a little more top-end speed going around the outside now. Does he get the move done by the time they hit turn 2? Yes, he will. That's Nicholas up into the race lead of Season 1, Round 6 here at Imola. Meanwhile, a little further back, Keegan is dropping. So I thought that Keegan and Hollow Chicken might have just had a little tussle, but looks like Keegan has dropped down the order. He's currently P5, so he must have crashed or had some sort of incident. Let's see, is there damage to his car? I think I spot a missing front right winglet, so that might be a little explanation as to what's going on. He is currently under threat from Silver. Of course, he does have that loss of downforce, and there's Silver just going straight through the ghost of Keegan. And that is probably how he is feeling, soulless, like a ghost. It seems as though he cannot get a normal race through the first section of the session. And now it's Ryan, of course, coming up behind him. Also goes through to take P6. Keegan dropping rapidly, and that is probably why he is a ghost, is because his pace is just not consistent enough with the rest of the grid. But he decides to stay out. He's not going to let that interfere. George, however, is right up behind Nicholas. He did not like the fact that he took the race lead away from him. He's worked fairly hard for that pole position. So now he's going to be chasing down that blue and yellow car behind him. He just needs to hold on until he can get to the DRS section. That is where most of the overtaking on this track will happen. It's going to be staying within a second through turn 16 and 17 before they hit Ravazza, the final couple corners, and then he's got that speed on the pit straight. Well, it's not really straight then, is it? It's more of a double right-hander and then to turn to left hand. It's like saying, you know, it's a straight out the Nordschleife. There we have Nicholas. I thought in my brain, oh yeah, going on the defensive. No, he isn't. Hollow Chicken, meanwhile, has managed to catch up to the back of George. He's only 0.7 seconds behind that car now, so he might potentially have DRS too. On board with George now. Listen for the beep. We didn't hear a beep, but we can see the effects of the DRS. Nicholas trying to defend, but it's his move right back at him. George back up into the race lead of round 6. Brilliant performance. Great racing between these two. Really competitive fighting between them. So now what's going to be interesting is to see whether Chicken interferes with Nicholas for P2. I'm sure he will. Meanwhile, Ryan is being pestered by Silver for P5. There was almost nothing between them. There was 0.05 seconds between the two, but looks like there has been a little bit of a gap now opening up between them. So that might be a battle to watch in the future. But we shall continue to keep an eye on this trio right at the front. P1, P2, P3, our podium positions fighting it out. They all do seem to be within a second of each other. So Nicholas is 6/10 behind George. Now closing that gap, he'll obviously have the DRS. There's the flap going open. Will he get past by the time they get to turn 2 though? That is the question. Round the outside, George trying to defend, and again there's just nothing he can do. So even though he was half a second behind by the time they exited turn 19, there was absolutely nothing he can do. George though trying to make a move into turn 5. That's a little bit of a risky move if he had tried to pull it off. Now Hollow Chicken obviously is right behind as well, so while these two are constantly swapping positions, Hollow Chicken just catches right up behind them and then can use that same slipstream. And that is a slow car indeed. And there's a virtual safety car now. So all these drivers will be locked in their race distances. Whoa! Hollow Chicken locking up the rear tyres to try and get that car stopped. So virtual safety car then. There's a car stopped somewhere on track. I'm not sure who it is. It looks to be the yellow car of Sully, I think, who has crashed out. None of these cars are sitting stationary. So I believe that was Sully who has retired from the session. Oh my goodness, and George just losing it through turn 18. And a drive-through for Keegan as the virtual safety car comes to an end. And now it's more than a second separation between Nicholas and George. So during that whole virtual safety car, Nicholas just managed to keep it consistent, just keep a straight line, and he is now a second and a half ahead of George, which means that George now won't have the benefit of that DRS, but Hollow Chicken will. So now he's going to get caught up in a battle with Hollow Chicken for P2 rather than fight for the race lead. So he needs to close that gap if possible, but we've seen how quick Nicholas is. He managed to catch up to George after a somewhat slow race start. So I'm not sure George is going to manage it. He's potentially lost the race win here. Hollow Chicken, though, is thankful for that situation because he's now only 0.2 seconds behind George. Seeing the consistency from both of these drivers. But of course, in the Drivers' Championship, Hollow Chicken is P2, George is P3. And if the reason for that is just pure luck, then then we should see some close racing. But I have a hunch Hollow Chicken is going to be coming by through now with the DRS on. He is only 0.3 seconds. He's going to be passed before they even hit the braking zone or start thinking about braking for turn 2. So that's Hollow Chicken now up into P2 for the race. Further down though, we do have a battle between Ryan and Akka now. Ryan just getting ahead of Akka before they hit the braking zone of turn 2. So Ryan is also on a charge, but he is 9 seconds behind George now. So a podium position is very far. Ryan having to go on the defensive into turn 5 and 6. It's close racing between these two as well. Ryan, of course, our rookie racer, trying to force his way up the overall championship leaderboard. But after missing many of the races, it'll be a hard and tough journey for him to make it up anywhere near the podium positions. Akka, though, is not too far off. So we could potentially see some more good points for Akka. So 0.8 seconds. Ryan is gapping Akka slightly. And he does seem to be catching up on George slightly as well. He was at 9 seconds before. He's now down to about 8.8 seconds. So is there potential for a podium finish for Ryan? I'm not sure. We'll have to watch and see. Meanwhile, up in P3, George is just managing to keep up with Hollow Chicken. Still within half a second now. But I think we're seeing the difference in pace here come alive. Back down in P5 though, Akka is not giving up on Ryan. He's only 0.3 seconds, and that's Ryan into the gravel off at turn 6. And Akka just cruises by, so we'll see this battle unfold potentially all over again if Ryan's pace stays consistent. And we are now at lap 10 of 32, about a third of the way through the race, and it has somewhat solidified. The standings are somewhat solid now. So let's talk a little bit about what's happened so far. George qualifying pole. He's dropped down a couple of positions. In fact, let's get the graphic for that. We do have a little helpful little menu over to the right hand side of our screen to just manipulate the standings board with. So Nicholas and Hollow Chicken up a position each. George down 2 positions. Keegan down 3 positions. He, of course, was the last driver of that, what do we call it, quad? How do we call it? A group of 4. The guys fighting for pole position, he was the unfortunate driver who didn't manage to set a final lap time. I am just keeping an eye on George because he is still within half a second of Hollow Chicken, so he's just managing to keep pace, but he's not quite there when it comes to just outright pace today. So, sorry, getting back to the standings. George down 2 positions, almost all the other drivers up a position. Keegan now, after a pit manoeuvre from Silver, means he's up to P6, but of course we do have pit stops scheduled for the race. Not mandatory pit stops, but pit stops nonetheless. They do need to happen if these drivers want to see the checkered flag. I'm interested to see how Hollow Chicken does on Nicholas. So Chicken obviously, whoa, a little sideways moment for Aka coming into turn 14, locking up the rears, sliding out over the sausage. Good reaction from Aka in keeping that car straight, or somewhat straight. Meanwhile, George now only 0.2 seconds. He's going around the outside into turn 2. Again, very typical overtaking place for this track. There's not many places else you can do with that. But George then showing he does have the pace to keep up with Hollow Chicken and the race leader. But as it was, Hollow Chicken was making good progress. That 1.8 second gap was down to about 1.4 by the time George decided to come past. Now, of course, there is still that dirty air aspect. Yes, the regulations try and minimize that, but you will never truly get rid of it. Now, down in P5, it is once again Ryan trying to overtake Aka for P4 and try to make some progress. Aka now 12 seconds off of Hollow Chicken. So there is, again, just that massive gap that he still needs to make up. Now, Keegan, who's just behind in P6, he, of course, lost a load of positions after a collision or a crash, I'm not sure what, but he is missing a front winglet, so I'm sure at the next pit stop opportunity he's going to try and get that fixed. And then hopefully we'll see a little bit of a run. Oh my goodness, George now with a penalty, a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Both George and Hollow Chicken now coming into the pits. Almost thought Ryan was going in as well. And let's see, where do the drivers come out? Here's a move from Ryan down the inside into turn 2. Simple move. So that's finally Ryan past Aka for P2 at the moment, but ultimately P4 if they do not manage to stay, if they don't fall behind the other drivers. There's Aka now going down for a move into turn 7. Great side-by-side racing. They're still side-by-side coming through turn 8 now into Piratella. It's going to be interesting. Ryan falls behind Aka again, so hard battling between these two for P2 at the moment, but ultimately P4, if they keep fighting, they won't be able to make up that gap to P3 and ultimately start fighting for a podium position. Now into the chicane. Is there going to be a move from a driver here? Ryan, potentially. No. He is obviously going to have that DRS now down into turns 2 and 3 across the start line. He's right up on the back of that blue and red car ahead. And rather than follow Aka into the pits and maybe get caught up, Ryan decides to stay out and continue his run. Nicholas now also into the pits, so the pit stop chaos begins. We do have a couple penalties. Let's see if we can have a look at that again using the handy little bit of software. So George with a 10-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. That seems, yeah, I mean that seems all right. And then Aka and Keegan, I guess, for multiple collisions or some or other reason. We do not know at the moment. But then the hards come on for our top 4 drivers. Top 5 excluding Ryan, who will drop down, of course, to P5 once he does his pit stop. If everyone is on even footing, that is. Keegan also just came into the pits for his stop. So Ryan and Kunga are due a stop and swapping out those softs for hards at any point in the near future now. And just one moment, because I think we have just seen another shake-up in the race. Yes, we have. Everyone except Kunga and Ryan have made a stop. Here's Ryan out into the pits. So at the moment then, George is still in the race lead. George now takes the race lead away from Nicholas during the pit stop, but now he loses it again. So we've just caught it in time. Nicholas going around the outside of George into turn 2 to retake the race lead. When we came in to the pit stop kind of mayhem, it was Nicholas ahead and George came out ahead of Nicholas. So wow, a little swap for position there. And we're pretty much right back where we started, except that there is now only half a second between George and Nicholas. He's managed to catch up again in that pit stop kind of mayhem as we've talked about before. And now George just needs to hold on to that half a second gap to Nicholas. Just keep rubbing, just stay behind Nicholas as close as he can, to be honest. Just as long as he's within a second, he'll do fine. Because we've seen he has been struggling slightly on pace today here at Imola. And as long as he can stay within that second, he'll be fine. It's then pretty much then just a dice roll as to who is ahead by the time we hit lap 32, which is, by the way, only another 15 minutes or so away. We are currently lap 16 of the race, halfway through. Here's George now with the run on Nicholas. It is a little far. Could he get the move done down the inside into turn 2? He had a look, but that is the first time we have not seen a DRS use result in an overtake today. Oh my goodness, and there's a stationary car. That is Kunga in the pits. Apologies, me freaking out. Now, while these two have been battling, there is, of course, Ryan and Akka, who have come out the pits, and Ryan is, again, just within a second of Akka now for P4, and the gap between Akka and Hollow Chicken has opened up to 14 seconds now. And Kunga, of course, 50 seconds behind Keegan. Keegan has to make up 16 seconds to Silver, who is another 16 seconds behind Ryan. So there is lots of ground to be made by the drivers at the back. Ryan actually dropping slightly in terms of lap time in that last couple sectors. Huge lockup from Nicholas just ahead of George, who we are following at the moment. He'll have DRS out into the main straight. We've seen how quickly that gap can close, but we have also seen just last lap how George has struggled to try and keep up with Nicholas, and we can see it here. He's not even close to the rear of Nicholas as they come into turn 2. But he does seem to be preserving his tyres slightly better. So could we see a last couple lap shootout between those two? Ryan now only 0.7 seconds behind Akka. That yellow car trying to make progress on the blue and red car. And he's right up behind him now, only 0.2 seconds coming out of turn 3. Is there potential for a move even before we hit the DRS zone? Maybe, if there's a mistake from Akka ahead. It isn't impossible. Meanwhile, Hollow Chicken is trying to close that gap to George ahead. He's closed that gap by about 0.3 seconds. So it is possible. Ryan now 0.4 seconds. George now 0.4 seconds as well. To Nicholas just ahead. So is there potential for an overtake into turn 2? Back up with George now for the race lead. Going around the outside. He has managed to keep pace, but Nicholas is defending hard. Again, another foil attempt by George to take the race lead away from Nicholas. Nicholas now suddenly on the defense. Is there a move from George down into turn 5? No, there isn't, but he is putting Nicholas under pressure. This is the first time Nicholas has had to operate under such pressure. We have, of course, seen them swapping positions all the time. Looks like Akka and Ryan are swapping positions as well. Battling down there for P4, but at the moment we follow George and Nicholas. So 0.4 seconds between them. Really, all the action is on that straight when the drivers receive their DRS. That is really where the only overtaking opportunities are on this track, and the only places we've seen overtakes happen on this track. I'm also keeping an eye on Keegan down in P7. He's managed to make up about 6 seconds on Silva, who is in fact losing out on time when it comes to trying to catch up to Ryan ahead. He's now down to 22 seconds behind. 0.7 seconds between George and Nicholas. George obviously with the DRS. Closing the gap. He's not going to be close enough. However, I tell you who is going to be close enough. It's going to be Ryan, only 0.3 seconds behind Aka now. Is this potential for an overtake? He's got the speed down the inside. Yes, he is. Down the inside into turn 1, and that move is done before they hit the braking session. So that is then Ryan up into P4, finally past Aka. It's taken him a really long time, but of course this battle is not over. Aka still 0.2 seconds behind him, so there could still be potential for another battle here. Keegan meanwhile has managed to close that 10-second gap, now down to 6 seconds. So all in all, he's made up 10 seconds on Silva. Here's a move from Aka now around the outside into turn 9. They're giving each other space. Great racing between these two for P4. They're trading positions. There we go. Aka's got the inside line down into Aqua Minerale. They're still side by side. Wow! That was incredible racing between these two for P4. There was Aka with a little look down the inside. He's got his nose in. He's, of course, going to have the DRS. But there is Ryan dropping behind, so he can get the DRS. Is this a strategy call for Ryan to get the DRS on the main straight? If he's timed this wrong, then he's really just shot himself in the foot. He will then be sitting without DRS. No, he hasn't shot himself in the foot. In fact, he's launched himself forward. This is Ryan now with the DRS down the inside into turn 2. He's gotten that overtake done, but the battle is not over between these two drivers for P4. We've of course seen Aka's pace in the second sector. Is there possibility for a similar exchange very soon? Yes, there is. Round the outside into turn 7. He's got grip, this driver, and that is Aka ahead of Ryan. Through turn 7, an overtake round the outside. Brilliant overtake from the man currently in P4. So then, it is still Nicholas and George P1, P2, then Hollow Chicken P3, Aka and Ryan now fighting for P4. Again, Ryan 0.2 seconds behind. Oh my goodness, that's a sideways Aka coming into turn 18. He's feeling that pressure. Under braking, locks the rears, and of course now Ryan will have the DRS on the main straight, but he won't have the slipstream though. Wow, what a sequence of events. So Aka, with a brilliant move around the outside at turn 7, then essentially then forfeits his position into turn 18 with a lockup, sliding to the rear, and that is then Ryan up into P4 now. But I think that is only going to be a temporary thing, because of course we've seen the battling between these two last for so long. I'm sure it'll last right to the end. Keegan meanwhile trying to overtake Silva now for P6. It's finally time for Keegan to make an overtake. He hasn't made one in a long time. You can see the difference in pace between them though. Down the inside into turn 5, side by side under braking. Oh my goodness, they are moving. Oh no, that is Silva banging wheels with Keegan, and Silva then spun out. Keegan once again potentially with some damage, but it doesn't look too bad. So that sector 1 caution, that sector 1 yellow flag is for Keegan and Silva coming together. Silva probably on track, but now we see Aka once again trying to make a move in a really tricky part of the racetrack through turn 19. He does have the DRS side by side. Ryan trying to go on the defensive into turn 2, and he is passed before they hit the braking zone. So Aka then, suddenly that gap closed, so there must have been something going on for Ryan just ahead. So Aka now back up into P4. And Silva has just retired from the session after crashing into Keegan. And I do think that was Silva's fault. He was not giving enough space to Keegan. Keegan left him just over a car's width. Yes, they have to do that, but you don't have to give any more. It needs to be at least a car's width. He was giving him just that. So I think, yeah, Silva pretty much just shot himself in the foot. It seemed as though he had little control over the car coming into turn 5, and then obviously just binned it straight into Keegan. So Keegan now 30 seconds to make up to Aka in that yellow car just behind, as we come into lap 23 of 32 now. And George is still managing to stay within a second of Nicholas, is now 0.8 seconds. Here's Aka defending from Ryan now into turn 2, and Ryan has just got that move done through turn 3. Now out of turn 4. He will of course have to defend potentially. Yes, he did, but Aka did not manage to make any ground on him into turn 5. Close racing between these two, so Aka and Ryan are really fighting hard. There's Aka going around the outside now into turn 9. We've seen the grip this driver can generate round the outside again. Great racing between these two. He's got the inside line into 11, 12 and 13. And they're still side by side as the rain starts to drip now. So the pace will then obviously differ. The grip levels will differ. There's Aka now down the inside into turn 14. So Aka now up into P4 again. Brilliant racing between these two. He was side by side through pretty much the entire second sector. And then just as they hopped into the third sector of the racetrack, he's finally got the move done. But now, of course, Ryan is still going to have that DRS as the rain starts hitting now, though. Yes, the weather starts interfering again. There's Ryan now, going down the inside into turn 2. He's got that move done very easily. George now only half a second to Nicholas. What is happening here? Is that potentially Nicholas struggling in the wet weather? George, of course, is a veteran of the weather changes here at the Cinque F1 Esports Championship. 0.6 seconds between the two. So I think we'll see someone duck into the pits for wets or just a different tyre compound soon. Aka and Ryan once again exchange positions. These two are fighting it out non-stop this race. Nicholas into the pits. So potentially this could just be a little drizzle, and that was it. So has Nicholas gone with a premature stop to just try and get those tyres on? He's been spooked by the rain. There is, of course, a time, you know, there is a limit as to when you should pit for these tyres, because if you pit too soon, those wet tyres will have an extraordinary amount of surface temperature and loss of grip if you drive them on the dry track, which is not completely wet yet. And so if that happens, if that is what Nicholas does, then he of course does not have lots of grip. But then of course there is that risk of just racing on a wet track, and yeah, you're left with no grip at all. So you need to pick your time for your pit. And you can see the drivers on those dry tyre compounds struggling. Only 7 laps remaining in this race as the rain suddenly descends on Imola. So turn 5, not turn 5, position 5. We've got Aka chasing Ryan once again. And you can see the little wobble from the rear of that blue and red car coming out of turn 13. And both going wide on the exit of Gresini. Now I've also noticed we've got a ton of penalties. We've got George, we've got Aka, we've got Keegan, all with penalties. Now the question is, do these two come into the pits now? Do they last one more lap? Aka decides to come into the pits, but Ryan stays out. So this will be interesting. The varying strategies will be interesting. Nicholas has, of course, already decided to pit for his set of wet tyres. There is Nicholas now on the intermediates. And you can see just how quickly that gap between himself and George is dropping. 23 seconds. George now into the chicane, and it is properly wet now, so I'm sure he's going to be ducking into the pits any second now. Unless, crazy strategy here, but if he can manage that gap to Nicholas, that's 22 seconds between them. Is there a chance for George to not pit and still cross the finish line in P1? He thinks so, because he's still out. So, yeah, this could be an interesting sequence of events. There's Keegan just coming out of the pits now. So at the moment, it's George, then Nicholas, then Hollow Chicken. Could this be an incredible strategy call from George concerning the rain? Because at the moment, he's not doing too bad. He's maybe lost 2 seconds or so to Nicholas. And, I mean, let's just bring up the tyre compounds just so we can figure out who's staying out on dry tyres. It's Ryan and George both staying out on dry tyres. Ryan also taking the same risk as George. He's currently 24 seconds ahead of Aka, who is on the green tyre compound, the intermediates. Now, of course, we only have about 5 laps of racing left. So, yeah, this could be an incredible strategy, an incredible call by George and Ryan to just stay out on their tyres, let everyone else pit, they take the risk, and see what happens. The gap to George between himself and Nicholas has dropped down to 18 seconds now. It was 24 2 laps ago, so that is about a 3 second per lap difference. If we only have 5 more laps of racing, 5 times 3, 15 seconds, so Nicholas will be 2 seconds behind if George can keep this pace. But of course the track will continue to get wetter and wetter and wetter, more moist, more moist, more moist. So the grip on those hard tyres will keep plummeting exponentially from this point onwards. You can see just the difference. That was a back marker overtaking George, who is currently the race leader. But George is not concerned with that at the moment. All he is concerned about is trying to keep Nicholas behind. Aka also only 21 seconds behind Ryan. So Ryan with a good strategy call as well. He was 24 seconds ahead of Aka just a couple laps ago, and that gap has only dropped to 20 seconds now, 2 laps later. So 2 seconds between himself and Aka every lap, which means that he can last the rest of the race on these dry tyres. But of course we have talked about, again, just the amount of grip that will be lost as the track just gets more wet as time goes by. So yeah, there is potential for a lot of things to happen here. And George succumbs to the rain. He has come into the pits. He's decided it's time to just get the wets on. So Nicholas retakes the race lead. I think this is potentially then Hollow Chicken up into P2 and George down to P3. So he decided he's not going for that full strategy of just trying to stay ahead towards the end. It was looking a little more ridiculous as time goes by. So yeah, a tough break for the man currently in P3 as he does that tyre pit stop. He of course does have a little bit of a penalty. I think it was 10 seconds penalty or a similar amount of time. And so George, where does he come out? That's Ryan. Oh my goodness. Ryan now is in P3. So Ryan comes out just past George, but of course he is still on that harder tyre compound. He is still on the dries, so George is going to be coming by at any point. You can just see the pace difference between them. I forgot temporarily that Ryan was on that hard tyre compound. Only 9 seconds now between himself and Acker, and that dry tyre strategy seems to not have paid off. The rain is just getting worse. The level of grip is just getting worse, as Ryan is testifying as he slides the car around that left-hander. It was worth a try though. He had been battling Acker for so long, and if he could pit him in this strategy, then that was, that was his, final. That was his final, say to the battle. This is it. I beat you. But unfortunately, that does not seem to be the case. He is sliding all over the place, and Acker is now a second behind, and Ryan has a 3-second penalty. So that is unfortunately the end of Ryan's brilliant run. There's Acker now accelerating out of Ravazza, and Ryan stubbornly refusing to go into the pits. I think that is the downfall of the driver in that yellow car. He took a risk, and it unfortunately did not pay off. And I think we can say the same for George. Oh my goodness, that's Ryan disappearing behind a wall. I think he's made it out alive. Yes, he has. He's still driving. Whether he's gained any damage from that is also another question. But now the final 3 laps of racing are upon us. Nicholas leads the race after a good call on the tyres, actually. Hollow Chicken was only about 2.5 seconds. Now that gap is 3.5 seconds between himself and the race leader. So Nicholas leading the race, then it's Hollow Chicken, then it's George, and everyone but Ryan is on intermediate tyres. We thought for a second, George, Ryan and I thought for a second that if we were ahead for about 25 seconds, we were ahead by 25 seconds when the rain started falling and the drivers head into the pits, that they could stay ahead, but unfortunately that has not happened. Ryan was 24 seconds a couple of laps after the rain had fallen, in fact, and he was doing well, but of course the rain just didn't stop, and we've seen the amount of carnage that the rain can cause in Imola. So the rain then, unfortunately, has managed to separate all the drivers by much more than it was before. Currently Nicholas in the race lead, 4 seconds ahead of Hollow Chicken, 27 seconds between Chicken and George. So if George had maybe pitted 1 lap after Nicholas had pitted, there would potentially have been a final battle for the race lead, for the race win. But unfortunately that has not happened, and he will have to take P3. Acker now P4. He got ahead of Ryan after Ryan thought the same thing. Ryan thinking we could maybe hang it out to the end, maybe hang on to these hard tyres, maybe hang on to the dry tyre compound to the end and just manage that gap. And it has not worked out in his favour at all. And I don't think he's headed into the pits yet, because he is now... He's 20 seconds behind Acker, but Keegan is closing that gap as well. He's now within 10 seconds of Ryan. So in the end game then, Keegan will only have lost 1 position, and we are on lap 32 of 32. We have been talking about a lot of other drivers rather than the driver we are following now, Nicholas. But we continue to follow the driver as he comes through the final couple sections, the final couple corners, the penultimate sequence, turns 14 and 15, then downhill into Ravazza, and that will be the end of round 6. So Nicholas then, in his first race on Cinque F1 Esports Broadcasting, takes the race win here at Imola. spinning out across the line. Nicholas, our race winner for round 6. Then in P2, it's going to be Hollow Chicken taking yet another podium. And then finally, it's going to be George, our final podium finisher, taking P3. A 30-second gap essentially between himself and P2. And I'm sure he is going to be very upset with himself, upset with the weather. And that is a sad podium. It is nonetheless a podium. It is a podium. He needs to be thankful for it, but at the same time, it could have been so much more. And I understand the pain. Aka comes across the line. Also, just do the norm and you'll be fine. Take a risk and you won't. Here's Keegan, and he just took Ryan's position away from him. Ryan now down to P6. Almost done. And Keegan now, of course, only one position dropped from where he started. He had the race start chaos, lost a winglet, loss of downforce, loss of pace, but maybe made up a little more of it towards the end. Crossing the line, and it is a sad yellow car coming across the line now in P6 for Ryan. A sad day. He had an absolutely brilliant battle with Aka for P4, but unfortunately that is the end of the race for all our drivers here at round 6 in Imola.
Hello.
Hello. I was just about to do a quick summary of the standings when it comes up. You're already celebrating. You're already like, let's just get this interview going, mate. Let's start the podium celebrations.
Yeah, not a lot to celebrate for me.
Oh, mate, it was, yeah, rough race, but you know, there was a lot to talk about. But anyway, before we get the interview underway, we have got the standings up on the board at the moment. Nicholas taking the race win, Hollow Chicken P2, and George a frustrating P3 considering he started the race on pole. And then Aka and Ryan, of course, had a brilliant battle for P4, but ultimately Ryan losing out towards the end. So a great race for some and a horrid race for some towards the end. But all in all, I think a very rounded race at the end and overall. So now we head into the interviews.
Yes, indeed.
Yep.
Let me just get the music muted and get you guys set up with the audio, because of course the music is very loud on this game. So the audio on Discord is a little tricky to get going.
Yeah.
I need to like turn you up to about 200% every single time. 200%. And there we go. Now we have our top 2, maybe excluding our P1 racer, our race winner Nicholas, in the voice chat for a little kind of post-race interview. Do we have Nicholas joining us?
I tagged him. I don't know if he's joining. He's new, so.
Is this his first race here with us
in this
today?
league, yeah.
Wow, we are just seeing all sorts of all sorts of things happening nowadays. We of course had Ryan last race, turning up saying he'd only done endurance racing before this, then turned up first race on F1 24, let alone with us, and he got a podium. And yeah, now we've got Nicholas. I'm excited to hear what his story is, if we can get him into the commentary box.
Yeah, we had a lot of we had 3 debutant winners.
I know, it's nuts.
It's ironic.
This is brilliant. And I mean, even today, just the battle for the race lead between yourself and Nicholas, you guys were trading spots right at the start. Just every single lap, it was whoever had the DRS was ahead at turn one. And the outside line seemed very appetizing every single time for you guys.
Yeah, definitely. I got blocked at one point when I tried to overtake Nicholas, and I got a bit frustrated. But yeah, then the rain came and completely destroyed me.
Yeah, and
Actually, no, the penalty destroyed me because it was completely annoying. I almost locked up. I was going like 81 kilometers, and I just got like a 10-second penalty for no reason.
Yeah, I saw it when it came in. I was like, that can't be true, not now. But it happened, and I mean, it seemed as though you were struggling slightly to keep up with Nicholas's pace. It was as if the DRS is what was keeping you going, and then of course, when you got caught up in the fight with Hollow Chicken Margarini, who's currently also in the commentary box with us, then that kind of gap opened up, and you were unable to kind of close that until something happened to Nicholas in the pit stops.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. So go.
No, Daniel, you go.
He's been talking
It's
too much.
alright.
No, okay, no, like the race was the start of the race was very very tricky. Like the DRS was king. Was impossible to recover if you weren't in a DRS zone. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of pit straight is really the only place where you could get an overtake done. But I mean, at the top level, that is. Further down the grid, they P4, P5, we had an absolutely awesome race between Aka and Ryan the whole race round. Aka was doing moves around the outside of turn 7. They were alongside each other through through Aqua Minerale. We had a move into Gressini, turn 14 and 15, that final chicane. So, I mean, further down the grid, they were having an absolute blast of a race.
Good for them.
Yeah, and then
It's
ultimately
a shame
Ryan
really
work
that
out.
we couldn't have these.
Yeah.
I was too busy. I came a bit unprepared this week, and I said on the league chat that I'm not getting a podium today because I had done no practice on the long runs, and the practice that I did on the long runs, I was suffering with high tire wear. So for the first few laps, I was just trying to manage my tires.
Yeah.
And then just try to push to catch Nicholas, but there is just impossible. I was getting so much understeer.
It was, yeah. It seemed a little bit of a kind of backslide, and I mean, it seemed like there was potential for a race win when the rain hit, because of course, Nicholas was ahead at that point and then ducked into the pits for an early pit stop, just as the rain was starting. And potentially, do you think you could have gotten the race win if you'd pitted maybe a lap after Nicholas had?
No, because I had a 10-second penalty that I served on the pit stop.
You're
And
right.
that's what I was actually trying to avoid, because before the race I saw it had only one patch with light rain. So I thought it's gonna last 5 laps tops. So if I can keep the gap over 10 seconds until then, the gap started at 26 seconds.
Yeah.
If I can keep the gap over 10 seconds, I can win. But the rain got heavier, and I was forced to pit.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate sequence of events, and I mean, I completely forgot about the penalty when the rain hit. I was just so obsessed with it because it seemed as though you were trying to stay out and just ride through the rain. Because it was about 24 seconds between yourself and Nicholas when he pitted.
Yeah.
And
if I had pitted, I would have came out ahead of him. But I had a 10-second time penalty, so unlucky.
Oh, that would.
It does not go well for me whenever I start from pole. I have realized that.
Mate, but I mean, even the qualifying battle was absolutely incredible to watch. Initially it started out kind of a bit. It always does. It always starts a bit kind of mishmash. Everyone doing a bit here, a bit there. Fast lap here, fast lap there, and then towards the end, you guys were just trading lap times. It was absolutely awesome.
Yeah, at the start of quali, we are always trying to figure out where the grip is, because the first few minutes there's no grip, and in the final 2 minutes we are all trying to set our laps.
Yeah.
Because the track is at its best.
Yeah. And then of course, you just keep cycling through the tire sets just to keep that fresh. So you go out, come in, go out, come in, keep the grip optimum.
Yeah, it was great, really. What can I wanted to say something else. So in qualifying, I didn't do a good first lap. So I was third. I was very angry because I think it was you, Daniele, who were ahead of me. You were in first.
The final stint of qualifying. Yeah, I was first.
Yeah.
And then I saw the fastest lap and say, that's not gonna be upper position.
Yeah. So basically, on my first lap, I said fastest first sector, fastest middle sector, and because I almost ran wide in the penultimate corner, I lost obviously 1 or 2 tenths. And I was so prepared to see P1, and I see P3, and I was so annoyed at that point. But I improved on my second lap on those tires, and as soon as I improved on used tires, I was like, okay, I can get pole easily.
And
Yeah,
then just suddenly
thankfully.
pulled out a 13.8, and everyone's like, "What are you doing, sir?" It was like, "Why are you up there?"
No, who was it? I think it was Alex on the group chat, because he replied to my text where I said I'm not getting a podium today.
Yeah.
And he just types, and then he just randomly sets a 13.8 for no reason.
He's like, "What have you done? Send me your setup." Yeah. Oh, wow. And I mean, it was really unfortunate watching Keegan because he was right up at the top, and then just unfortunately, just the way the laps ended, the way qualifying ended, he just couldn't get a final lap in that was decent. He was like the first driver to cross the line.
Yeah, it was a very unlucky race for Keegan in general, but bad strategy in quali. He forgot to refuel his car, so he was planning to do 2 laps on the final stint, but he didn't put in enough fuel.
Oh.
And in the race, while he was second or third, I think, he just disconnected. The servers just threw him away.
No, yeah, but at the beginning, the first laps and corner 2, I saw he broke his front wing and he continued to lost. Also, when I have to recover from fourth, I saw that he has barely no grip. Then I don't know. I overtake him while he was already disconnected, but. Yeah, he was struggling before, right after he broke his wing.
Because we saw the right winglet missing, and I assume the damage must have been a whole lot worse, and then just from there he was just dropping all the way down. Sorry?
He said it wasn't that bad.
Well,
He told me on the radio that it was fine, so
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, on the from the broadcast side of things, it looked like he was dropping rapidly. Acker and Ryan were going past. I mean, that's that difference of pace. Usually, he's the one that would be moving past them at such speed, but yeah, the difference in pace once he'd lost that wing was just horrible.
Also, I'm checking the standings right now. Daniele, you're leading. You took the lead.
Yes.
Yeah, because Pogadala's not here tonight.
You wanna hear the best thing? You took the lead by 1 point.
Oh!
Yeah. I imagined. Yeah, that's pretty good sensation, and yeah, I think the key of this championship with a lot of errors, a lot of rainy races. We had seen a lot of different weather in the same races, like Hungary or Imola. And I think the key is consistency. Try to make least errors possible. Like in the end of this race, I tried to get P1, but. Nicholas was too fast, so I said, okay, let's take home P2. And yeah, I think this is the key.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at the drivers' standings earlier, I was like, Pogadale might not miss out too much, and then obviously, did he get the fastest lap as well? Did you get the fastest lap?
Yeah.
There we go. So it was that fastest lap that gave you that 1 point advantage over Pogadala. So I'm sure the next couple races, we're only about halfway into the season now, and there's a massive battle for P1.
Yeah, it's huge. I'm close as well now. Like I lost 4 points to you, and I gained 15 on Ariant. So
Yeah,
Yeah, you are so
yeah,
close. I think there are three. Watching there are three for drivers that can fight for the
yeah.
championship.
I'm 18 points behind you right now, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah.
Yeah, should be fun.
and looks like Nicholas
Yeah.
has joined the chat as well. Potentially a podium contender for the championship and upcoming races. How are you, sir?
So I'm very happy after this. There's first victories from there's the new league where I'm steering now. So I'm very happy for this race and grateful by winning with my team. So yeah, that's why I was a little bit hard to race because I got some issues on the starts from the race and I got some good fight with the two drivers boys on the P2 and the P3. So and I tried to do my best and I didn't win.
Yeah, well done. I mean, it was absolutely incredible watching you fight with George for P1. You guys were trading positions every lap with the DRS, and then just right at the end, the early pit stop was a great strategy shout when the rain hit.
Yeah.
So yeah, great
uh,
work.
Yeah, cause I think there's a strategy. Cause I got a race I think yesterday. So
Mm,
and some driver make it a strategy like days I make on this race. So I copied here the strategy choose on this race. So and there's a strategy worked perfectly and making me win. So there's making me win on the race.
mm. And I mean, yeah, then it's on to the next race at Barcelona next week. And I'm sure Pagadala will be interested to see you on track. Pagadala's usually the driver who's out ahead. The last couple of races have been struggling, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see five-way battle for pole position at Barcelona next week. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
I think we are.
Barcelona. Barcelona is gonna be sorry, Daniele. Again, we have a weird timing. Um, Barcelona is gonna be a chaos on strategy, especially if it rains, and it usually rains on dynamic weather.
Yikes, that's going to be interesting. But anyways, yeah, I think that is pretty much the end of the full race session. We've seen some great racing. It's been great chatting to you guys. I think that's going to be it for tonight. Join us next week at Barcelona, and who knows, we might have another interview with one of you three, if maybe not all three of you again.
Alright, see you.
Yeah.
So that, ladies and gents, is the end of round 6 here at Imola. We've just had a chat with our 3 podium finishers, but that is the end of tonight's race. Join us next week for round 7 at Spain, Barcelona, same time, 5:30 BST, 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. EST, and we'll see you all there. Good night.